At this moment, for me to try to introduce Tom Moore to you is almost an impossibility unless I had all day and all night. Tom and I have been such good friends, and I've enjoyed every single aspect of knowing Tom. His deep reflections. What I admire one of the most is your ability to communicate on the highest levels, and to be able to communicate to everyone, to the world. It's enviable. I mean, actually, Hillman had a lot of that too. He had the everyday touch and the sublime, which is truly a great gift. His most latest interest is another thing. I mean, I took up golf a few years ago, and now Tom is writing books about golf. Because he's been really behind the work that we've been doing here at the Institute. He's been very much part of our history when he was a professor at SMU in religious studies. And so it's a wonderful pleasure to welcome you back to the Institute.
I'm the guy with the paper bag. That's for later. So I want to tell you, let's see, what do I want to tell you? It's so great to be here. It's been 5 years since I've been here, and to be with old friends, and you just have to sit, I just have to sit here and have so many memories, so many incredible memories. And I was thinking about it that the great thing for my connection to here and the people here is the support that I've had from so many people so often. I just want to mention two things. I remember when I moved away from here and I was up in New England, and the people of New England thought that my ideas were pretty wacky, you know, at the time. And so I would write Robert Sardello every now and then, and he would just encourage me to keep doing what I'm doing. And I don't think, Robert, you have any idea how that helped me. Your support all this time, tremendous support. What I wanted to do, I thought maybe what I could do is, I thought about alchemy, and I sat in on James Hillman's class on alchemy at the University of Dallas, as I know many of you did. Was it 78 or 79? Must have been around 78, 79. And I've never forgotten those sessions. And so when I think of alchemy, I hear his voice talking about certain themes, and I bring that some of those thoughts into my work as a psychotherapist. And I thought what I do is just let you know what some of those things are, since our theme is alchemy. A few elements of alchemy that I keep close to me as I practice therapy. So the first thing that I remember from that class was timing. The timing of the alchemist. That you have a different sense of time. You don't control time. You don't decide as a therapist how long something is going to take. Your patient client doesn't decide how long something is going to take. You observe what's happening, and one of the things you observe is the timing. You find out the timing from the process that you're in, and you can't make any decisions about it. I was thinking about some people that I've worked with. I'm going to do this thing you do in books, where I'm thinking of about 3 or 4 people, so I don't feel like I'm betraying any confidence. So I'm thinking of somebody who has been abused as a child, really badly abused, sexually abused, and in a marriage with children, in a marriage that just doesn't work. And that's like the presenting situation. And what do I think? Are we going to be here for a few days or for a couple of weeks talking about this? I doubt it. I think, thinking alchemically, I want to think in the long run. I don't know how long this is going to take, but I would guess several years at least. And in fact, the cases I'm thinking of lasted about 6 years. I don't know if the person coming into therapy would think, I can handle 6 years of talking about this thing. But I think to myself of what James said about alchemy, that we have to think about the timing in the terms of alchemy, which are very broad. So we don't think about getting through this quickly at all. We may not even get through it, of course. It may be more than a lifetime. But most of the time, it's a lifetime. It's within a lifetime. I received a message from one of these people just this week while I was away, saying that she felt that the timing was up. You know, the timing was over. Things are pretty good. And she said she didn't know if she could have made it. She knew she couldn't have done the work if she knew it would have taken 6 years. But I think that the alchemy helped me to be in something with a great deal of patience and not worried about how long this is going to take. So that timing was really important to me, to hear that about alchemical timing. That I can't decide it, nobody else can decide it. I watch patiently and let things happen. We look at the clock, but we don't look at the calendar. There's also the sense in that timing of the right moment. There's also the sense that this is the right moment, maybe for something to happen or to say something. So it's not just the length of time, but there's a moment for each step of the way. I don't mean to make a program of that. I'm just saying you sense that. Oh, this is the moment when we go deep down into something and it gets scary. And this is the moment when we find ourselves coming out of it temporarily. And then we can go back into it later. But there is also that sense of timing, of being at the right time. So I think that developing this sense of time, I know what you'd call that. It's not our usual way of thinking of time. That has been really helpful for me. Another thing that, of course, James Hillman was very good at was talking about colors. I was thinking, too, that when I was living in Dallas, I don't know when this was, must have been late 70s sometime, I had a discussion group meeting at my house. Jean Lau might have been there. I don't know, Jean, I think you didn't come to those? A number of people came who were passing through or in town. And one time I asked Jim Hillman, I asked him if he would come and join us. And he said, well, what would you like me to talk about? And I said, I wish you'd talk about blue. And of course, he was delighted to talk about blue. So it was a wonderful evening to have gathered people around to talk about the color blue. I mean, I don't know how many people do that. You know, to say, what will be the theme of your conference? Blue. And it was so useful for me, I know, to hear him talk for an evening about blue. I had read his piece on blue, but that's different. You know, when you talk about it, when you sit around and discuss a color like that. So the colors then, of course, are very important. And I live with an artist. My wife is a painter, and we talk a lot about colors. And you know, artists are very fussy about colors and all the different gradations of color. And so the colors are important to me as well. And one of the colors I thought I'd mention to you is yellow. It's one of my favorite. Yellow is one of my favorite colors, especially pale yellow. And one of the experiences I have is when I travel, I sign a lot of books, and people bring a lot of old books. I can't tell you how often it's happened just this past week. How many people have come to me with 1992 editions of Care of the Soul for me to sign, and their pages are all yellow. And when I look at the book coming to me and I see the yellow, I think alchemy. I think of the alchemy of this book, that this book has yellowed over time, and how wonderful it is to look at this yellow book. And usually people apologize. They apologize for the yellow pages. They don't know how meaningful it is to me to see a yellow page, because I see the process. There has been an alchemical process going on. And sometimes people will say, well, I haven't read this book yet. I really like that, because I don't believe a book is to be read primarily. A book is to be there. It's like the books here that are present to us. We're not going to read those books today, but it's a wonderful thing to have them around us, as Joanne said. So I get the yellow book and I think of the process of the book. It's been there incubating on a person's bookshelf or in their library all this time. For what? 25 years. And I think it's terrific that they haven't got yet to read it, because that could destroy the whole thing. That could ruin the whole experience. There's something about having the book present, having it nearby, that it does. It's like osmosis. It's just you have the book. I have books like that. I'm sure everyone here would have books. I have books that I would never, ever get rid of, but I have no intention of ever reading either. But they're yellowing. They're on the shelf yellowing, and I think that's the alchemical process. That's what Trinitas, that's what I think in that wonderful essay that James wrote about yellow. That's my favorite. I mean, I really love blue too, but I really like yellow as well, because yellowing is such a part of life. And I'm writing a book now, I'm just about finished, on aging. And I wrote a chapter called Yellowing. My publishers, they don't quite get that, but I'm going to try to get it in the final edition. I don't know if it'll make it, but it's such a pleasure to write about aging as yellowing. That things of their own change, they transform. They get more beautiful in some ways. The yellowing of the book is not an ugly thing at all. I see those yellow pages and I see beauty. And then I see the time that is represented on the page. And it's not about anyone's intention. Nobody has tried to make the books yellow. That's the best part of it. They've done it all on their own. Those books are sitting there yellowing. You think they're just doing nothing. They're not. They're yellowing. And then we have the opportunity to be there when this process is taking place. Another alchemical term that I love, I guess it's my favorite of all the alchemical words, putrefatio. I just love putrefaction. It's such a wonderful thought. And I especially like the images from alchemy when you have a couple embracing in the black liquid, and then there's the lettering saying putrefatio. I mean, that's terrific. How many times have you met couples putrefying? It's, and normally, if you think of that, you think, well, these people are in trouble. But if you're thinking alchemically, you know it's the process. And it's a wonderful process to be in, putrefaction. It's a great place to be. And as a therapist, if you have an alchemical frame of mind, then when you see the science of putrefaction, you don't get all worried about it. You just see that this is happening. And you know that there's promise in it. And you know that your job is to be in this process of putrefaction. It's not to be the one who speaks for some later wonderful stage or something like that. That's another aspect of what we heard this morning, not being in the stages, not going from one place to another. You don't have to see putrefaction as leading anywhere. You can just see it as having its own validity. And that allows you to be in it for as long as it wants you to be in it. Another term that I like very much is prima materia. what I translate that as raw material. So prima means raw material. So rather than see a life problem that someone might present, I've got this problem I'd like to deal with. Like if someone says, I've heard it a couple of times, can you help me stop smoking? That's the prima materia. So when I think of it that way, I know that my job is not to help somebody quit smoking because that's only the raw material. That's one way of looking at it. This is interesting raw material that is for the soul work, but not, you don't have to just take it as it's presented as this problem that has to be solved, because we are not doing problem solving, we are doing alchemical psychology. We're into the alchemical process. That has helped me tremendously to get beyond the literal aspects of the process of therapy. There's, it's a poetry that allows other things to happen. You can see at a different level. So I love being in the raw material, and I think it reframes, right from the beginning, reframes things. So no longer do you think of a problem to be solved. You get caught up in all the literalism of that, the mechanics of trying to make life better, all of that kind of thing. It's not, alchemy is not about making life better. It's obvious. So so that's greatly liberating. I mean, tremendously liberating once you make that step, that you're not trying to make anything better that way. But you've got raw material. So if someone says that they're very upset about their problem, and if I'm seeing it as the raw material, it's like that's really good, because we all need raw material. I remember so often being with James in various settings, and particularly remember in the Boston area, where both of us were talking about preserving our symptoms, of loving our symptoms, and making sure we don't lose our symptoms, and hoping we find some more. Because it's the raw material. What can you do if you don't have raw material? But the next step is also significant, that you've got the raw material, then you do want to do something with it. You can take it somewhere. It doesn't have to remain raw. That's why I was listening very carefully to the references to cooking in our previous discussion, that the raw material has to be cooked in some way. Needs some heat, needs some time. That's all it needs, though. And that raw material can show itself as part of a person's heart and soul. But the raw material, another thing I feel about the raw material is that it doesn't all have to be cooked. And that would be a shame, to psychologize everything or make everything therapeutically pleasant. Because we need the raw material, you want to save some. You want to have some raw material left behind. I think very often of my own mother complex, which I often speak of because it's so dear to me, that I have worked on it many times. I've worked through the mother complex and suffered it many times, but I would never want to see it go away, like it's all been therapized or something. It's all been subjected to therapy, because what would I do? I wouldn't have any more raw material to dip into. That's how I see it. Raw material is there for you to dip into in order to use for this next phase in life. You need that raw material every stage. I hope it's a big vat of material. I hope that I only work through a little bit of it, because I want to have a lot of it left over for me. And I think there's something good and something very comforting to go through life knowing that you have all this raw material of symptoms and problems and terrible inclinations and all of this stuff, because that gives you so much hope. You've got it there to use for whatever you want to build or make. I mean, life is like that, isn't it? You go from one phase to another. You might get a new job or move to a new place or be in a different condition in some way. well, then that's when you need your raw material again, especially. So you bring it with you, you pack it up, take it with you wherever you're doing, and you've got that for you for the next time through. I mean this. You know, I really mean it, that the raw material, it's not a good idea to look at it as something to get rid of or something that is negative or bad. And when we enter the therapeutic mode, let's not get too heroic about it. Let's not try to accomplish too much, because maybe part of our process is to protect the raw material, make sure we've got it. Just as you would, you know, if you were a sculptor and you had clay, you don't want to use everything up. You want to have a source. Well, we need a source of raw material. I can't believe I'm saying that. Okay, another word I like from alchemy in my work is separatio. This came up earlier. So what I like about separatio, a number of things. I like to hear it in relation to the word separate. So when I hear people talk about that they want to be separated, let's say from their partner, they want to be separated, I hear separatio. I don't hear, oh, how can we get you out of this partnership or this relationship? I hear separatio. So that's the process we're in. We're in an alchemical process. We're not in problem solving again. We're in an alchemical place where separatio means a number of things. It can mean separating yourself out, sorting out. I spent a lot of time in Ireland, and one of the things I notice when I'm in Ireland is that people use the word sorting there a lot. We don't, in ways we don't use here. They'll walk into a room and say, well, we've got to sort, don't we? We've got to sort everything out. Have you sorted that? They'll often say. I like that because that's a separatio word. We sort things out. We don't solve them, except unless you want to get deep into the word solve and solution, we can do that. But we sort things out. There's this, there's that. When we start out, even if it's not the therapeutic context, but just an ordinary life situation, things haven't been sorted. Things haven't been sorted. And we need to sort separatio to begin with. That's an alchemical process. So can you imagine a very ordinary conversation? A lot of conversations are alchemical in that regard. They're sorting. We're sorting things out, sorting out the way we use words, sorting out our approach to a problem or issue. Very alchemical. And then, when you stay with that, I think what we do is we end up with more of a separated sense of self, that we are separated. I mean, you can use the word individuation if you want, but I've never really felt too good with that word. But I like the idea of being a separate person. You're separate. We have separated ourselves out. We're not like everybody else. And I'm separate from my past. I'm separate from my family. I'm separate from my partner. I'm a separate person. It's not easy to do that, but that's the alchemical separatio. I also like cauda pavonis. That's one of my favorite terms from alchemy. Cauda pavonis. It means the peacock's tail. And the way they present that is that the peacock's tail opens up. This is sort of later in the process, they say sometimes. So the peacock's tail, you know, it just fans, opens up. But in the way it's described in alchemy, in the way it's pictured in alchemy, the peacock's feathers and the different colors are equated with the 7 classical planets. So it's an astrological image, the cauda pavonis. But it's also an image of James Hillman's, one of his favorite ideas, I think it was one of his richest ideas, is psychological polytheism. So there we get the idea that we're not going toward wholeness, we're going toward the manifestation of our variety and our having sorted ourselves out into all these elements. So that helps me too. Cauda pavonis, where are we headed? We're not headed to a place where everything all suddenly makes sense. We're not headed to a place where a person feels whole. There's no integration going on because that's not the process here to get to the cauda pavonis. You don't integrate a peacock. You You don't close up the feathers and say how beautiful. You have the variety of colors. The variety of colors. And each of them, and all of them being there, is what we appreciate. And I think that's a very different sense of where you're headed, where you're doing therapy or, talking about life. We're moving to a place where the many colors manifest. The many different colors manifest. Different moods maybe, or different persons, the different people we are, the different desires and longings that we have, they all show up as the peacock's tail unfolds. It's not chaos. That's what's nice about it. This is not a chaotic polytheism. There's nothing like that. This is a beautiful unfolding of color. And it's a shimmering kind of thing. These aren't solid colors. You look at a peacock's feathers and you see the glow and the mix of colors. So that's the ideal, you might say. That's what we like. If we need a picture of where we're headed or what we want, I like that. Cauda pavonis, the peacock's tail. I keep that in mind. And just one more thing about this. I like the word opus. I wrote a book years ago called Life. Now it's called Life at Work. That wasn't my title. I wanted to call it opus. I wanted to call it opus because I wanted to point out the parallel between the opus of the soul, or the alchemical opus, and opus as your job, your career. I wanted to say that when we do our work and when we embark on our career and go through all the processes, that we're working at the opus, the soul opus, when we do that. And if the alchemical opus and the job don't somehow relate to each other, that's not a good situation. Maybe when we're looking for a job, if we thought about that, instead of going through the usual exercises that we do and trying to find out what our aptitude is, all those suggestions people have for us in finding a career, what if instead we thought about the opus of the soul, and that it's our opus that is what has to be primary as we try to find out what work we have to do in our lives. Made that connection between opus and see that our job is alchemical. Because a lot of people, they leave the job unconscious. They don't think about the connection between the two, and then the job is either just a burden. It's a burden, or we burn out in it because there's no soul in it. There's no root, no connection. We're not into the opus. I know that's why I feel in writing these books. Why, how I got into that, I don't know. But as I write the books, I know that it's my opus. I mean, each book I write is trying to figure something out for myself, maybe for others and for the world, but mainly for myself. I'm trying to sort something out. Like now, I'm writing about aging. Why do you think I'm writing about aging? Talk about an opus. So that's, I guess you could say it's kind of inner and outer and all that kind of thing, but the two work together. Now I have to make a slight shift here. It's not entirely a shift, but Robert and Joanne both suggested to do something that I don't think it's a good idea to do here. I really don't know. If you feel like leaving halfway through, please. I won't be offended. But this is very personal for me, and it may not speak to you, but it speaks to me a lot. So I want to talk to you about this. When I think it was about a year and a half before James died, I was going through, I was driving by, and I stopped by in Thompson to talk to him. And it was just the two of us, and we had a long conversation. And he and I were asked to come to the Dallas Institute. That's why I'm not sure about the time of it, because he was about to come here. He was scheduled. I was scheduled. Robert, I think the three of us are supposed to do something here. Do you remember that? I don't remember just when it was, but it was not that long before he died. I don't know, it might have been 2 years, 1.5 years, something like that. Anyway, there we were. I remember it standing in this little room talking to him. And he said to me, he said, I wish I could go to Dallas. He said, I wish I could go to Dallas for that conference because I haven't said enough yet about image. He said, I wish I could say something more. Now, how much has he said about image and images? You know, and he wrote these 3 big articles for Spring many years before. And that's what he told me. He said, if I could go there, he said, I wish I could. He said, I wish I could talk about image. And I don't remember further it exactly precisely, but I came away with the feeling that he wanted to go further in talking about image without interpreting images and without making images into symbols. That whole process that actually started with the first article he wrote in Spring on working with images. So that's what he wanted to do. And I thought about that because something has happened with me that I think is in that vein that works for me. I doubt if it would have worked for him. I think he would have just scoffed at it, but it works for me. So here's the story. It's a bit of a, I have to tell you a bit of a story. When I was at Syracuse University getting my PhD in religion, it was a very wonderful program, very open-minded, deep, very deep-seated, but very open about religion. Don't think of any way of thinking of religion you've had. It's very, very intense, deep sense of what religion is. And I was looking for a dissertation topic, and my graduate dean was hard on me trying to find a topic. He said, I'll give you 2 weeks or else. So I was in the library. Now, I had studied music seriously before then. So I was in the library trying to force myself to look in the religion department area for look at some books, get some ideas. But I wandered unconsciously into the music section of the library. And I was standing there at the shelves, and right above me was a set of black volumes, black thing, leatherette kind of volumes at the very top. And I mean, this is one of those stories. You know, I just reached up in the middle of this stack of books and pulled one down and opened it up. I found out it was a journal of musicology in French. It was a French journal of musicology. So I opened this thing up, and here's this article in French about Marsilio Ficino, who was this 15th century priest, magus, magician, astrologer, Platonist, and so on. And I thought, well, this is it. This must be it. This is a good topic. And he hadn't been translated from Latin into English yet at that time. And I thought, this is great, because I had been in a monastery. I knew Latin pretty well. I took 2 years of philosophy, all taught in Latin. You know, maybe I can do this. So I thought, at least it'll look like a dissertation because my problem is I knew that I just can't write a dissertation. It would never look like a dissertation. It would be something else, a novel or something. So I thought, well, this is great. I can translate this, and I'll write a commentary, and I'll get the thing done, and that'll be it. Well, what was that, 1975? You know, all that time since, that has been on my mind. All my work is in relationship to that book I pulled off the shelf. Everything I've ever done is directly related to that book that I yanked off the shelf that day and opened up at random. Well, Ficino was very influential in history, a certain history that not many people know about, not many people study. It's called the Hermetic, sometimes called the Hermetic tradition. Sometimes it's just called the magical tradition. In that tradition, they developed, people who were interested in it, developed what they called magia naturalis, natural magic. And they meant this, natural magic. Ordinary magic. They were interested in words. How can you make words powerful? You do that. Every one of us in this room tries to do this. You know, I try to get a title for a book that people will want to read. That's natural magic. finding the right word. Or when you try to get people to come here for an event, you need some natural magic to get people here. Rational methods won't work. No, we have not explored this. I'd like to, one day, one day, in 30 years hence, I would like to work with architects on natural magic, because it seems, especially I'm interested in hospital design. I would like to show or explore how we can use natural magic to create spaces that accomplish what we're looking for that is not just rational. Anyway, that's another subject. I'm not here to talk to you about that. But Ficino had followers. Other people read him. And they're very interesting people. I'll mention a couple in case you've ever heard of them. Trithemius. Trithemius was a man who had a dream that he should be the abbot of a monastery. And by the time he was 19, at the ripe age of 19, he became an abbot of a monastery. And according to the stories about him, he had two doors to his monastery. The front door, the people came in for mass and services. And the back door, the magicians came in to consult with him about magic, natural magic, because that was his passion. Well, down the line, at the time of Queen Elizabeth, there was, again, one of these people heavily influenced by Ficino, who was a very bright man. He got his degrees at Cambridge, and then he was teaching and studying at Oxford. And he was a book hunter, hunting for books, any kind of books and manuscripts. He's a very bright, widely educated man named John Dee, D-E-E, John Dee. And John Dee not only had this, he was like Trithemius, he not only had his interest in literature and philosophy and all these things, mathematics, but he was also a natural magician. He was a magus, but he had his own way of doing it. And the way he did his magic was to use an obsidian stone. He used an obsidian stone, a polished stone made of black obsidian, which comes out of volcanic rock, and he used that in order to get his insight that was called on by all the people who came to him, including Elizabeth I. And she came to his house for advice. Now, can you imagine? You probably have seen movies about Elizabeth. She was not somebody to get on, say, I'm going to go and see one of my subjects. They came to her. But she actually went to John Dee. He advised her, he told her when to have the coronation based on astrology. He told her, he's the one who gave her the idea of a British Empire based on his stone, his black obsidian stone. And he instructed the navigators, the great navigators going around the globe on these uncharted oceans so they could find the places they're looking for and come back home. So he was a pretty important person for them. And he used, this is the black bag, so he used for his knowledge a black obsidian stone. So that's what this is, a black obsidian stone. Now, I was in the British Museum about, I think it must have been 10 years ago. And I asked the people there at the door, the people helping visitors, I asked them if they had any alchemy exhibit because I wanted to see some alchemy. Wanted to look at some alchemical apparatus, and they said, no, we don't have that here. You go to Oxford, they have it there. So I walked out of the museum, and I'm walking down the steps, and this woman comes running after me and says, wait, we have John Dee. So I said, all the better. So I was very excited, and I went to the exhibit. I didn't know it was there. And there was this exhibit in a glass of John Dee's own stone. It didn't look exactly like this. It was a little larger than this and thicker, and it wasn't like saucer shaped like this, with these thin edges. It was thick on the side, about an inch thick, but highly polished. In fact, I was hoping I could have images for you today, but I wasn't able to pull it off. But I have a photograph of that day when I was there looking at John Dee, because I took a photograph, And I like it because I'm in the mirror. I'm in the stone, you know, from the picture. So I always feel that's a good thing, good start for me to be in the stone. But I went home then, and I told my family, who are very interesting people, and I told them about what I had seen there. And so my son, my stepson, bought me a stone, an obsidian stone. Not this one. The original one he bought me was like an LP record. It was flat and quite big. So I put it on my desk, and I just left it there. And every day I looked at it. I didn't know really what to do with it, and nothing happened. And I looked at it for about 3 months. Talk about timing. I looked at it for 3 months, and nothing was happening. But one day I went to it, and I looked at it, and I knew that something was different now. Something had changed. I picked it up. This is really new agey. Sorry, forgive me for this, but it actually felt hot to me. You know, it really felt hot. And I felt that it had been turned on, and something was like there was motion in it or something. That's how it felt to me. So I brought it to my wife, and I said, it started. Someone did something, it's turned on. And she said, well, let's get to work with it then. I mean, my family are ready for this kind of thing. So, so I said, okay, let's get working with it. So that was, I say, about 10 years ago. And since then, we use the stone. We use this stone primarily. This one I brought. I have a traveling one, very easy to carry around with me, but I thought I should bring this to you today, you know, the big one, the bigger one that I use. So whenever we have any major decisions to make, or even minor ones, so especially when we travel or anything like that, we do what John Dee did. We look at the stone. My daughter got married last year, and she married this young man, very, very nice young man from Mexico. And this John Dee's stone came from Mexico, so this is from Mexico. And so I just want to tell you very briefly how I use it. So, because I think it relates to James and his images. So when I use this stone, I often use it in our living room, and you always get a reflection that's literal from the ceiling if you hold it that way. Or I turn it sometimes just to get other literal images. And there's an interesting, quick transformation from the literal image into another kind of image. I mean, a second level of imagery. It's like you see something next. Like if you look at a cloud in the sky and you see first you see a cloud, then you see a dragon or something, you know, whatever it is you see in the sky. It kind of moves into that kind of an image. And that image remains present for me as I'm talking to someone, like if we're trying to figure out about traveling or making a decision for the family. So we see that image, and then it transforms into another image, and I focus on that. But then what's interesting about this, I don't know how it works, but as long as I stay close to that image, and if someone begins to ask questions or discuss what it is we're talking about, the answers come from the stone without any interpretation. The answer to the question comes from the image without interpreting it. Does that make sense? I don't understand that. But as long as and by the way, John Dee couldn't read the stone. He had to hire people to read it. He wasn't able. And my family can't do it. And they're very intuitive. They're up for anything. But they can't read it. I don't understand that either. So they asked me to read it. So I look at the stone, and you know, and sometimes it's very serious, the questions that we explore with this. I mean, very. And I felt that this maybe is one way in which we could answer the question that James is going for. How can you work with images without interpreting? How can you do that? I suspect that John Dee had maybe the answer to that question, at least one answer to it. That is, you have to stay with images. You have to have this kind of a magical environment or magical attitude toward it rather than the rational attitude, certainly. It's more within the context of natural magic that you're looking into it. And as you stay with an image, it takes you to a place where these solutions, where these answers come out without any interpretation at all. They appear. They appear. That's all I can say about it. Okay. I felt like Abraham Lincoln today. I've got in the back of an envelope, you know, a couple notes, a few notes. But that's my precompositional material. I often don't use these, but because I'm at the Dallas Institute, I thought I should have one. So we all have precompositional material. We all come with certain things. Our family life is part of that. Our wishes, our hopes, our experiences, all of that is precompositional. And we make something of it. We improvise our lives, just like a jazz musician.